How are we feeling tonight? Excited? Yeah, I think, first of all, thank you for TEDx for having me here today. And I've really enjoyed the two speakers so far. Today is pretty special for me because it feels like coming back home. I'm an ex-student of TranPhuGiftedHighSchool for gifted student. I was an English major. Shout out to Hoai. Yeah, and so in university, I studied at Wien University in business administration. Then I went to exchange at Cornell University, and last year I was very fortunate to, I think I was the youngest person from a Vietnamese university to get admitted to Harvard Business School. I was 22. I suspect that was why I was invited to be a speaker today. So my speech is a bit clickbaity, how to get into Harvard. But please bear with me, I promise it's not that boring. This is not another study abroad counseling fair, okay? So my journey started very young. Does anyone here know a Korean movie called Harvard Love Story? Chuyện tình Harvard, can you raise your hand? Okay, bad news, if you know that, you're kind of old. Because I first watched it when I was 5. My mom had this old TV set and we would tune in every day, 8 p.m. to see the movie. And it was about these two young Korean people who are very good looking and very smart, and they got into Harvard. So from a very young age, it was kind of ingrained into me that Harvard is a special place. It's where people who are rich, smart, good looking, funny go to school. And if you get in, you're a special person and you will be happy ever after. And so as I grow up even more, I watch Disney, Phineas and Ferb, Gossip Girls, Gilmore Girls. This kind of exposure to American culture kind of steered into my head that, hey, if you get into Harvard, you're golden. And even though deep down I know I wouldn't get into Harvard anyways, because, you know, it's like Harvard, I tried to be a model student. I go to all the extra classes. I went into the National Olympiad. I actually won the gold medal like 6 times. And I had 1580 SAT. I was a great debater, and I actually won a scholarship to go to summer fair provided by Harvard. So even though I knew it was a far shot, I was like, okay, let me try. Let me just try anyways, right? So what happened was, at grade 12, I asked my mom for an allowance. I packed my bags and I go to Hanoi. I went to the biggest study abroad counseling companies I can know. I come in, I put down my resume, and I'm like, please get me into Harvard. Guess what they told me? They look at my resume, they're like, girl, I'm sorry to tell you, you will never get into Harvard. And what they said exactly was my scores were high, but that would mean that I'm kind of nerdy. And American schools don't like nerds, you know, they like people with a personality, which I apparently did not have. They also said that my extracurricular was kind of normal, and my essay was not special, and they received like millions of these profiles every year. So what they said next was, you can be special if, guess what they said next? You pay me $10,000. So I work on your profile, and I give you the Cinderella makeover, then you go to a great school. And that was kind of out of the question for me, because imagine what I would do when I go home, like, Mom, please, spend a car on me so I can might or might not get into this school half the earth away. So of course, like a coward, I was like, okay, thank you for your recommendation, I'm going home now. And deep down, I felt this sense of relief, because, you know, these people are experts, right? If they say I couldn't get into Harvard, then probably that's true. If they say so, it must be so. So I paused my Harvard dream and I went to university. That would have stayed the same until I met this new friend. His name is Tien, and he basically was like the exact profile as I was. We were both debaters, we were both English majors, we won the same prize, his SAT score is the same as me. The only difference was, he actually applied again to universities in the US. And of course, as a good friend, I was like, good for you, try really hard, okay? I have your back. But deep down, there was a voice in me that said, he's never gonna make it. You know why? Because I can't. We're the same person, right? So imagine my surprise. I still remember this was a Wednesday. 6 a.m. on a Wednesday, there was a knock on my door. Guess who it was? It was Tien. He came into the room with all of our friends and he said, Thanh, I got a full ride into Princeton. And I remember feeling very happy for him for about 3 seconds. Then I felt probably the ugliest emotions I've ever felt up to this point. It was a bowl of jealousy and anger in my stomach. Jealousy at somebody who has this achievement I've dreamt about my entire life, but anger at myself. I was so incredibly angry that he got in, but I didn't. What was the difference? What was the difference between us? Our profiles are exactly the same. The voice deep inside of my stomach told me, I know what the difference is. The difference is, while you were rationalizing away the reason you cannot get into Harvard, your friend tried. Your friend went to find a company that provided a free counseling package, because it was the company's first cohort. He tried again, and he got in. So actually, what you did differently from him was not anything about your ability. It was about your character. It was about the fact that you let some other experts determine what you can do with your life, and you just rationalize yourself away. And to realize that you fall short of your dream not because of your ability, but because of your character is a terrible realization for an 18-year-old. It feels small now, but back then it was the world to me. And I was actually kind of depressed for about 2 to 3 months. So what happened? It wasn't anything really special. It was just a random morning around a couple of months later. I went to a cafe and I started looking for my summer internship, like unemployed people do. And when I scrolled the LinkedIn, before, when I looked at all the jobs, I was like, nah, this job's not good enough for me. I'm an intellectual person. I got gold medal in học sinh giỏi quốc gia. So I should be able to go to these interesting, intellectual sounding, high paying jobs at big companies. What are these little companies? How dare they employ me? But now I look at all the companies, I'm like, maybe they're good enough for me. Maybe I'm not that special. I'm just a normal person. So I applied, and the company I applied to was an NFT company. Does anyone know what an NFT is? Can you raise your hand? Okay, a couple. Now you think about NFT, you think scams, which is actually kind of still true. But back then, it was this exciting intersection between blockchain and art. So I was like, why not? And when I came into the company, my official position was operations intern. My actual position was, I worked on Excel spreadsheets VLOOKUP function for 8 hours a day, because the company was too poor to afford a proper company CRM. So doing Excel 8 hours a day was a nightmare, but I'm a normal person, so I'll stick through it. And I made it my goal, this was my ultimate goal, to be the best Excel person this company has ever seen. I will be the Excel wizard. And I made it. I was the Excel wizard, and then after being the Excel wizard, I got transferred to working with a couple of clients. And the work started to get interesting. I learned about what an NFT actually is. I learned about, the economics of it. I learned how it can actually help artists, and I enjoyed it. But most importantly, I learned to enjoy working in a technology and startup environment, which led me to my second important decision. One day, I looked at my messenger, strangers DM, like we all do every 6 months, to see if any old friend or random weirdos are texting us. And I saw this message from a guy. He was like, I have this new organization called TEDxYouth. I want to help young founders. Here's my proposal, please join. And at the time, I remember my exact thoughts were, does this guy think I'm rich? Because I'm really not a good target for a scam. You should pick somebody else. Do your targeting better. But then I thought about it. I was like, if I were trying to go to Harvard, I would pick a more prestigious organization with a longer history. But look at who I am now. let me just try this out. I like startups, right? What is there to lose? So I joined, and the first task I was given was being a marketing executive. What I actually did was Facebook group seeding. Anyone in here who has done Facebook group seeding, raise your hand. I know there's a bunch. I know at least 50% of the high school students in here have done it. Good job, by the way. So it was, if you know the work, you know it's terrible. You spend 8 hours a day finding these random ass Facebook groups and writing these awkward captions only for people to shoot you down until someday you might get some registrations, right? But again, I will be the best Facebook group seeder this company has ever seen. So what did I do? I employed my younger sisters and brothers to help me with the seeding. I devised a payment scheme for them and an incentive scheme for them. I learned about Facebook algorithm, and I was a really good seeder. So if any of you, including our speakers, need a Facebook group seeder, you know who to call. I'm available. So then, after all of that, I actually went on to do more important stuff at TranPhuGiftedHighSchool. I ran a 600 people event with zero budget within 10 days, much like TEDx today. And I remember there was a part I wrote in my journal. I was like, I will never F-word do this again. This is so terrible, which I suspect a lot of the TEDx crew also feel at some point in time. For instance, when it rains right before the event, right? But then I pulled through. And what I learned that was the most important was, if you think you can do it, you will probably still fail. But it's a better feeling than thinking that you cannot. Because at the end of the day, you still have to do it. And I went through a lot of these crazy, seemingly random, highly suspicious decisions, which led us to last year, January 2024. At this point, my mentor, Brian, the one who founded TranPhuGiftedHighSchool, texted me and was like, bro, I think you should apply to Harvard. I was like, haha, bro, you're very funny. I told him he was insane. Like, all these people working at JP Morgan, all these big banks, they fail. Why would I even apply? But he told me the same thing I believed all along. You might as well try it. What's the worst you can face? Fail? They can't reject me twice, right? Actually, they can, but you know. And there was another good coincidence at the time, which was I met my boss at my current company. He's called Kenneth. I knew him through a mutual connection, and the first time I met him, I was like, this guy looks really suspicious. But you've seen a pattern with my story at this point now. And he told me about the startup he was working on, which was a startup that wanted to use AI to give better study abroad counseling to kids who don't even have the money to afford it. And when I heard that, I was like, I went through that. That was my story. So even though I had better offers at the time, I joined the company. And fortunately, Ken was also a Harvard Law School graduate. So he connected me with a lot of great people from Harvard and Stanford and all of these great schools, you know, to get advice. And what I noticed was interesting was, you would think these Harvard, Stanford superhumans would be like really posh, right? They would have this British accent, they would look expensive and rich, and they would be these incredible beings that are so different from all of us that it just makes sense I didn't get into Harvard in the first place. But what was surprising was, they were normal. They were completely normal people. They had a working class family, they went to normal schools, some good schools, they talked and acted like normal people, and the only thing that was different from them was they loved what they do. Their story was full of crazy, seemingly random decisions like mine, but we shared the same thing, which was we chose whatever was exciting to us and whatever was a good problem. Good meaning that it was interesting, people tried to solve it, and if you can solve it, it makes a great difference to a lot of people's lives. And so, with that new knowledge, I approached my application this time very differently. I did not talk about my grades, I did not talk about the big name companies I interned at. I talked about my NFTs, the seemingly random NFTs, how they're being used for scammers, but they could actually have a really great potential to help artists make a more sustainable stream of profit for themselves. I talked about TranPhuGiftedHighSchool, where I met with a lot of amazing founders, and the structural, capital, cultural, social constraints that prevented them from being great. I talked about my mom. Shout out to my mom over there, guys. Give her some love, please. She's very confused right now because she doesn't know what's going on. I talked about my mom, who didn't graduate from high school, but ended up being the best businesswoman I know. And she taught me so much about how to look at markets, about negotiation. And I told all of these stories just in a very normal way. I didn't try to make myself seem impressive. I think my biggest selling part was I sounded really passionate about what I was talking. And so I applied to 4 schools, which led us to April last year. After the days passed, we got rejection letters from Stanford, then MIT, then U Chicago. And the last letter to come out was Harvard in April 16th. And I was waiting for it at home with my mom and dad, and I remember feeling this weird sense of peace. It didn't feel like I was waiting for a result. I felt that even if I failed, I would still be very happy, and I believe I would still have a full and complete life ahead of me. And April 16th at 10 p.m. Vietnam time, I opened my mailbox and I got into Harvard Business School. So this has been a very long-winded way to answer the question of how to get into Harvard. I had that clickbaity title because I figured it was the only way people would actually listen. And I got into Harvard, I think, by giving up on Harvard. And it applies not just to Harvard, but to a lot of other things in life. I know there are a lot of high school students here. I know you guys are probably chasing the same things I did. Good schools, great scholarships, titles, prizes, jobs. And it's okay to chase those things. But there comes a point when the pressure of chasing these labels will suffocate you. They prevent you from taking risk, and they prevent you from choosing paths that seem not that impressive yet, but would actually help you form who you are. So I learned 2 things. 1, choose good problems. Problems that excite you. Problems that seem meaningful and interesting, and you know when are solved, people will be helped, even though it's difficult. Don't chase labels. And secondly, once you choose a difficult, good problem, give it your best shot. Be the best Excel wizard you can be. Be the best Facebook groups leader you can be. And go above and beyond, because that is where the real learning begins. And that's how you get to newer and better places. Even if you do all of this and you get a little bit unlucky, you'll still have a very long, fulfilling, happy life. And if you're just a little bit luckier, well, you'll get into Harvard. Let's hear this my speech. Thank you.